Yay Media Group.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Cornelius Lindsay, and I welcome you to another episode of This Is Life with Heather and Cornelius. I am back talking about my book, I Don't Care. It's now available Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. You can get it Apple Books, Kindle version. I also have the Audible version, so if you're working out, riding the car, you're going to listen to it, it's available for you. I also have autographed copies that I sell on my website, corneliuslindsay.com, so you can go in there, you can get it too. If you didn't get a chance to listen last week, I would encourage you to. I talked about, not feeling enough, and I actually write about that. It's chapter 6 of the book. Today, I'm going to go differently. I'm actually be reading from chapter 8, The Weight of Nothing, and then I'm also reading from another chapter in the book, and that is chapter 9, which is The Freedom of Indifference. So I'm just going to combine these two together because I thought they really went well together. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to read this. I'm on page 110. If you have your book and you want to follow along with me, you're more than welcome to 110 and 111. And then 110, 111, the top of 112. And then I'm going to go to page 124. Ready? Let's go. The subtitle of this is A Church Confrontation, Breaking the Mask. In 2022, I was picking up groceries, just trying to be normal, anonymous, human, when a former church member stopped me in the aisle between cereal and canned goods. His face was tight, eyes scanning mine like he was looking for someone he used to know. Then came the question, blunt and loaded. Why'd you abandon us? The nerve, right? Not why did you step down or how are you doing, but abandon. As if my humanity was a betrayal. As if stepping away to survive was a sin against their comfort. I felt the old defense mechanisms revving. Apathy whispered, shrug it off, keep walking. I could have given him half a smile, nodded politely, and moved on like I had done 100 times before. After all, church folks leave without warning all the time. They ghost, they gossip, they grieve you without ever checking if you're still breathing. But pastors don't get that luxury. We're supposed to be shepherds, always accessible, always full of faith, always ready to bleed quietly while still showing up on Sunday with a smile and a word. I burned that bridge not in bitterness, but for survival. Staying would have meant dying slowly and politely, emotionally, spiritually, maybe even physically. But still, his question stung, not because it was malicious, but because it revealed a wound he hadn't named and a role I hadn't fully released. I took a breath and faced him. No mask, no script, just me. I was dying, I said, voice steady but raw. I had to choose me. His shoulders loosened, his eyes watered. He wasn't angry, he was grieving. So was I. In that aisle, under fluorescent lights and awkward music, something holy happened. Not a sermon, not a revival, just two people wounded by the same system finally telling the truth. That moment wasn't about closure. It was a kind of resurrection. I wasn't trying to win him back or justify my exit. I was done performing. I cared enough to speak plainly. And that honesty, simple and uncloaked, lightened a weight I didn't know I was still carrying. It was me choosing truth over image, liberation over legacy, life over applause. And maybe, just maybe, that was ministry too. And I want to go over here to chapter 9. Page 124. The subtitle is Liability, the Word That Broke Me. But then the deeper betrayal, the kind that echoes. My name was being dragged by strangers, people who didn't know me, never met me, yet felt entitled to rewrite my story with lies, mockery, and manufactured outrage. That was hard. But what broke me was when people who did know me, who once affirmed me, cheered me, preached alongside me, either joined in the slander or stood silently by. And worse, I was told to say nothing. Silence is wisdom. Don't give them fuel. Write it out. But to me, someone who has always been confrontational, who grew up believing that silence equals complicity, keeping quiet was hell, I felt muzzled, powerless, swallowed by public narrative. Then a conversation I'll never forget. I just shared how excited I was to have my heroes team advising me, a childhood dream manifesting. They emailed me back, call us. I called, eager, naive. What I got was cold clarity. Cornelius, I'll keep this short. Things seem to be heating up even more. We haven't known you long enough to maintain relationship. You've become a liability. Liability? That word echoed over and over again. On the edge of divorce, which I was. Liability to my wife. Developing a drinking problem, which I was. Liability to my family. Struggling with direction, which I was. Liability to myself. No support from my stepfather, which is true. Liability to his routine. No relationship with my birth father, which was true. Liability to his reputation. Being smeared online, which happened. Liability to my hero and so-called friends. That word, liability, was the rope dragging me down into the abyss. Not because it was true, but because I believed it was. Because for years I'd been taught that value comes from being useful, not from simply being. And when you're no longer useful, they'll drop you. That was the abyss. Not the cancellation, not the unfollows, but the realization that your humanity was negotiable. That someone else's crisis management strategy, you were just a line. That in someone else's crisis management strategy, you were just a line item. And this is one of the unresolved tensions I still carry with church culture. The Jesus I've come to know, the one I still follow, didn't shy away from the socially unacceptable. In fact, he was often most found at their tables. He ate with tax collectors, sat with the outcast, defended the shame, and challenged the self-righteous. He didn't just tolerate the broken. He drew near to them. He chose them. But somewhere along the way, his followers stopped doing the same. I've watched this same song and dance play out more times than I can count. Someone falls, fails, accused, gets publicly shamed, others join in agreement, social media journalism, and suddenly the ones who once cheered for them, worshiped beside them, even broke bread in their homes vanish. The religious elite called for distance, and the circle obeys. Friends scatter. Even some family members cut ties. Silence replaces solidarity. And that's what wrecks me the most. Not just the fall, but the abandonment that follows. The ones who preach grace became strangely quiet. The ones who claim to be for the broken become allergic to the breaking. You claim to want to reach the broken, but you run when humans break. The church hurt me. Not a cliche, but a catastrophe. So when the people say the church hurt me, they're not talking about a worship style or a worship set. They're talking about the deep betrayal of being discarded by those who once called them brother, sister, family. And yet, instead of compassion, they're met with a tired, dismissive rebuttal. Well, people at Target hurt you too, but you still go there. But here's the difference. Target never pretended to be family. No one at Target baptized me. No one at Target laid hands on me, cried with me, or told me we do life together. Target doesn't promise community. It promises convenience. That's the unspoken contract. I go there to get what I need. I leave, no strings, no wounds, no betrayal. But the church, the system, promised more. It spoke of covenant, of belonging, of unconditional love. It said, you're safe here. So when that same place becomes the source of your deepest pain, it cuts differently. To compare the two, Target and the church, isn't just unhelpful, it's revealing. It exposes how much of modern church culture has been shaped by consumerism, not Christ. Because when people become liabilities instead of image bearers, when relationships are transactional, when reputation outweighs restoration, that's not kingdom. That's commerce. And maybe that's the scariest part. That the very place meant to model the radical love of Jesus has in some corners become a spiritual marketplace where loyalty is bought with silence and grace is offered until it costs too much. I still believe in the church. I still believe in the body, but I also believe in telling the truth because you can't heal what you won't name. And if we keep choosing optics over people, we may look clean on the outside, but we'll be empty where it matters the most. And here's what I know now. If you survive the abyss, you find something deeper than relevance. You find yourself. Not the version they applauded, not the version they used, the one who still has worth even when no one's watching. And that is freedom. I can't tell you how dangerous this book has become for me. It's interesting because I meet so many church-going people who tell me, they say, I admire your authenticity. I admire your vulnerability. And it's interesting because we ask for it so much. I don't think we understand the cost that comes along with it. It's dangerous. And this book, I mean, it was already bad before. I mean, I could tell you a number of pastors who walked away from me. I was told by preachers, you'll never preach on my stage again. I thought, I was so baffled by that because I thought that it was, that the common thing that was said was that it was God's stage. It was God's church. But it's not God's church because it's your church. And it's your stage now. And you hold your stage in such esteem that, you know, that now I've disqualified myself from speaking at it. For what reason? For truth telling? For finally somebody acknowledging what is right before our eyes? For honesty? For just saying that, yes, hypocrisy exists and we should stop pretending like it doesn't? And we should stop trying to vilify it as though it's not right before our eyes? Because you're trying to, again, measure somebody else's worth based on their sermons or that they've mostly probably copied from somebody else, or the semantics of their statements, or the books that they've written, or the perfection that they give from the stage, or maybe the looks that they give, or the pictures that they post on social media. That we somehow forget about the concept of humanity, which is why when that guy saw me in the store and he looked at me and I was kind of taken aback by it. I mean, the first thing he said to me, he didn't say hello, he didn't say how you doing, he just said, why did you abandon us? And I recognized it in the question in itself. I mean, there was some personal reflection that he had to do for himself because obviously he had dealt with wounds of abandonment. I get it because I deal with those too. But for him to come out just flat-footed with, why did you abandon us? Not hello, how you doing? How have you been? Blah, 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 what's been going on? It was just, why did you abandon us? It cut deep, which is why I had to take some time to really think before I responded, because I wanted to cuss him out. But I thought, I probably shouldn't do that. And that's when I just told him what I was doing was killing me. And in that moment of honesty, under the fluorescent lights and that awkward music that they had playing, that weird, jazz-like music they had playing, we were able to have a truly human moment of him not seeing me as some type of robot that shouldn't get hurt. It may get hurt, but shouldn't show it. that doesn't have feelings, that shouldn't show emotion, that should just be extremely stoic and just keep going on with life. And that's just not real. That's not true. And finally, the acknowledgement of where I was and saying, I recognize this is where I was. I recognize this is where I am, but this is not where I want to end up. Like I want to move on. There are other things that I believe that I'm called to do. And while I did this, and while I believe that this was great, and while at one point I said I would do this for the rest of my life, it's just not the trajectory that I'm taking. And I should be allowed to go in a different direction. I should not be forced in order to just be in one space at one time. I should be allowed to, and I should be allowed, like anybody else should, to be able to navigate life and make different choices. Ultimately, that benefits me. And I've said that before, and I've had preachers who will say, "But yeah, I thought the whole thing was just about the will of God, just doing what God wills." Well, His Bible is very clear. The will of God is that all men come to the knowledge of who He is. But even on top of all of that, at some point, I finally got to a place when people would say, "I don't understand why you would leave the pulpit." And I would tell them, I didn't leave the pulpit. I just took it with me. I think because of how the system is set up, we have pigeonholed people into a box. To say, this is the only way that you can share who God is. And so we leave huge pockets of people outside of the box. Being outside the box now, I run into people who would never step foot in a church. They don't know what church music is. They have no desire to ever go to one. They hike on the weekends, always have since they were children. They go hiking. I moved to California and I realized people go hiking on Sunday. They go hiking on Sundays. When I lived in Mississippi, I lived in Georgia. People went to church on Sunday. You didn't even like God, and you still went to church on Sundays, and you gave a tithe or something. California, they go hiking. In Georgia, you drive around, there was a church on every corner. In California, there's a psychic house on every corner. It's like it's a completely different world. But I had to look at it differently. And I had to say, okay, so what are the people looking for? Do they need a house to go to? They need a building in order to occupy every single week? Is our marketing strategy, let's build something cool so that you can come to us? Or is it the will of God that says, let me build you so you can go to them? And where do you go in the marketplace? Like my wife, who is an amazing options trader. And she's in a field of finance right now that is completely, like, she is a huge anomaly. She is a woman of color. She's a woman. And you don't hear about women as options traders. You don't hear about that. Then a woman of color is doing it as well. And then my wife is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. So it's like when she tells people, yeah, I'm an options trader, they always look at her like, what? Because they expect for her to just be like, oh, I'm a model, or I do. And she's like, no, I'm an options trader. She can sit there and tell you, oh yeah, I do this, blah, 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 blah. And she just goes on with them. And it's just these men look at her like, what? It's usually these older men. What? You know this? Yeah, I know this. But she's in a completely different field now of finance, where before she'd be on a plane every single week, traveling around to speak to a bunch of women, talking about pinky promise and get out of his bed and do this and do that, which was cool, which was great for what it was. But now she has an opportunity to go to a single mom and to teach her a skill that can get that single mom out of poverty. That even if the dad, if those kids' dads never give her another dime of child support, that now she's able to walk away from her job because now she makes more in options trading now than she did back then. And now when this woman is the most acceptable, and now she has a bridge that my wife has built through relationship, through trust with this woman. Now my wife can then share the only truth that we know that saves us all the way into eternity. And that's where ministry comes alive. But people are so fixated on one part. This is what it must be. And with this book, I don't care my goal has been to dismantle the system. It is part memoir of the last 5 years of walking through deconstruction, of having to reaffirm and tell people I still love Jesus, even though I've never once denounced him. But you would assume, and they would assume that I would, because I am very critical of the system that we have created that is enslaving so many people. But ultimately, I don't care. And this is the freedom of letting go. And if you're stuck in what you're stuck in, no matter what's the religious system, people pleasing, no matter what it is, it's time for you to get free. And I hope I help you to do that by getting the book. I don't care. Because you need it. Join me next week for another part of this book. I love y'all. Introduce it.